People sometimes say that there are three big struggles that all Christians will experience at one point or another. The first one is sex, the second one is money, and the third one is power. The story of David includes all three, but mainly the struggle seems to be the one about power. And right here, as we read today, we're reading more of a power struggle that's going on. You've heard of the Hunger Games? This is the Power Games. And this is where there's civil war. David really is removed from much of the vicious backstabbing that's happening. It doesn't seem to be him, it seems to be some of his followers who constantly plague him as the story continues. Joab, the son of Zeruiah, and some of the other ones. And on the other side, you've got Israel, who are led by a kind of a puppet king. The real sort of guy who's in charge seems to be Abner, the general. And so you see the way in which there's manipulation, there's murder, there's killing, and there's strife, and ultimately it leads to a whole load of misery. Now, God is able to work through that, just as he's able to work through dysfunctional political systems today to bring about his ultimate will, which was at that time that David would become king. God is still able to work through dysfunctional power systems, but it's an interesting thing for us to note that a lot of the exercise of power that takes place in these stories leads ultimately to death. Whenever God gives us power, he wants us to use it to lead to life, to create life. And how you use power is a difficult thing. Often today we don't recognize that power can be exercised from a position of weakness, and often it might look like weakness. So you see Jeremiah the prophet, for example, and we're going to read his book later on in the year, but Jeremiah is spending a whole load of his time telling the people of Israel that they're living wrongly, that they shouldn't be doing what they were doing, when all the other prophets were fitting their message to suit what was going on in the culture and the political agenda. Jeremiah was standing firm against it. As a result, he got thrown into a pit. No one listened to him. He had to see his country burned to the ground around him, and that must have been a horrific thing. But he was powerful in his faithfulness to the message. He was able to stick with what he was called to. You can think of people throughout history that have also picked up on this. Dietrich Bonhoeffer is one. He was executed during World War II for opposing Hitler, and one of the things that he's written that people have remembered is when he says, when Christ calls a man, he bids him come and die. And it's that willingness to sacrifice and to lay down life. You see it in Jesus himself, and the way in which he exercises his power with such strength to defeat evil. And what Jesus' power does is it sets people free and it brings them to life. You have been given a small amount of power, whatever that might look like. It's maybe a younger brother or a sister. It may be friends that you have influence over. It may be colleagues at work. You have been given power. Think today carefully about how you might use that to bring life and to bring richness into people's lives around you.